Okay, so I'm showing off my advanced reference box. Hopefully it has some kind of value to somebody or just is neat to watch. So this is what a standard reference box would look like. So you got your everything that all lines up. How I created this was I had just the one image that I got off Google search and looked for the highest resolution one possible. I went into Photoshop and cleaned it up a little bit. It basically brought the one in, and then I created a temporary polygon, which would be this one here, except for it has the wrong image on it. That's the, there we go. So this has now the proper image. So taking this, for example, I created this. So I created this square polygon, just one, and I made it so the lines were perfectly on the edge there. And then I just used the connect to put a line exactly down the center. So then once I had that, I set these squares to follow this one and set the pivot of this object to that center line, and then I set the center of it to this plane, because when you move this, you can confirm that the height matches by moving the X. So when you know the highest part of that roof, it should match exactly, and you can kind of just drag it around to confirm other spots, kind of thing. So the like this one here goes through the center, so that's an easy one to check, which would be right in here. And then these three things here, you can confirm that there's that one lines up, that one lines up, and these ones line up. So that's how I check that. And then I just cloned this, set the pivot of the other one to the center line of this, and then did the same thing. And then with the top, did the same thing, centered it to this one, and then I left this centered there, but when you're done you'd move it over to the side here. Now to make it so that it doesn't look so cumbersome, if you convert it to an editable poly, let me get to my other monitor here. Sorry if I'm not showing my other monitor. So this is a clone of it, of all those that I created without the little squares there, so that I could move this over to the side and attach, so that combined them all into one object. If you use this preserve UVs, you can do swift loops, and as long as you don't move any of the vertices around, it won't distort the image. And I actually think that, yeah, you can move the lines that you create around, and it won't mess up with your mapping if the preserve UVs is turned on. But you don't want to do too much. The reason for doing that was just so I can select these, and then not in the right click menu but in the edit geometry you go hide unselected, and then those still exist, but now you have just a nice clean box. The reason why I figured I might want to not just delete those other ones is, let's say for whatever reason I wanted to work in full screen and I don't need to use the other view, but I want to see the whole car kind of thing, but not on this angle. I don't need to see those other ones, so you know, just on the chance that it could be valuable at some point. Doesn't hurt to keep it there. You can always, just a reference box. So that's, and you got to be careful when you're using this mode, because if you have the W or E key, even if the object is, if you got it locked here, you can still move them at that sub-object level, which I wish you could freeze objects at the sub-object level, but you can't, sadly. So that's a standard reference box, how I created it. Pretty standard stuff. And then what I did to, helps if I have all of them on screen. There we go. Okay, so now that I have all these, I created a material ID, and since I used that same image, it's real easy to, you can just use the one image. You don't have to have multiple images brought in for top, left, side. So turning that on, it's currently the material. I have a standard material set up with just a full-on black opacity mask to make it all invisible, in case you want to be able to turn the visibility of it off, but have its visibility turned off, but not have it hidden, kind of thing. Because like sometimes if you have our object selected and you go into isolate mode, you still want your reference there. So that way you can always keep it selected and with your other stuff, and when you isolate, you still have it easily. And then you can just use the material layer to turn it off instead. And you can always find it again with wireframe. Anyway, so I'll show you what all the modes I created look like in Photoshop. So this is number one. It's the standard. That is the number two is the got rid of all the dimensions on the outside, and then just created my own color scheme to help isolate the blocks out, make the lines easier to see which ones are which when it gets messy. Number three is pure white, but the dimensions are gone. So this is, so like these are all transparent. If you were to build something behind, it would, so you can see it behind the lines. It's alpha transparent. So that's pretty handy. So that's kind of why I did that for each of the groups independently. So going back, this is my, I called this one my accessories. I called this one my bumpers, my doors, hoods, my roofs, side panels, wheels and chassis, all invisible. And then this is just all white wireframe. So with my materials, to set that up, I just basically created a multi-material. I like to manually do this because it sorts with too much spacing by default. So I just, in Photoshop, bring that on screen for you. So I just spent time creating my layers here. So I saved out this layer as a PNG with the alpha kind of there, and then that one's, so I got each of these layers that I worked on. So like if you wanted to, you could save combinations and put them into a material. The reason you see this is I have just another wireframe layer just to darken up the lines. Looks a lot crisper and nicer, but saving out each of these into the different modes made it so that I could create those images and assign them to this multi-material with the material modifier in here, right there, alphabetical order. You assign that, and then whichever material ID you pick, it basically picks which one you want to use. So that's a lot easier than going in there and manually assigning new materials all the time in the slate editor kind of thing. Anyway, hope that intrigues anybody.